Thugs harass a pregnant black woman, but they don't know a Hells Angels member is watching everything. The late summer afternoon in Atlanta was sweltering like the breath from a giant furnace. The asphalt in the Target College Park parking lot radiated heat so intensely that it created faint shimmering streaks, making every movement look distorted in the sun. SUVs lined up, horns blared, tires scraped the pavement. Kids demanded ice cream, all blending with the pop music blasting from the store's speakers into the familiar noisy rhythm of everyday American life. Across the lot, next to the bright yellow Waffle House sign, a row of Harley-Davidson motorcycles stood side by side. The bikes were glossy black, chrome gleaming, emblazoned with the winged skull logo of the Hells Angels Redwood chapter. To many, it was a symbol of trouble, violence, men decent folks should steer clear of. But those who had seen them help stranded motorists or protect women and children in distress knew better. They lived by an unwritten code of honor, loyalty to brothers, no betrayal, and never turning their backs on the vulnerable. Sitting beside his Harley Road King, Duke Ironhand, Mercer checked the chain while scanning the area through dark sunglasses. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the hardened face of someone who had endured great loss. Few knew his past, but one look at those deep brown eyes made it clear. They belonged to a man who had lost something irreplaceable and now lived cautiously, as if every moment were a line between life and death. Just as Duke bent to tighten the final bolt, Aaliyah Brooks emerged from Target's doors, 8 months pregnant and heavy. She pushed a small cart with a few cheap baby items, 3 discounted outfits, a pack of diapers, a box of wipes. Sweat trickled down her temples. Her breathing labored, one hand supporting her lower back to ease the weight. Her shadow stretched long and lonely on the pavement. The baby's father had left the moment he learned she was pregnant. Her family was gone, and life kept piling on exhausting shifts. Yet in her weary frame was a resilience, a dignity no one could take. At the lot's far end, where old sedans sat in the shade, 4 strangers emerged. Baggy clothes, low-brimmed caps, the swagger of Southside thugs. Spotting Aaliyah, one whistled suggestively. Another smirked, exchanged glances with his crew, and they all headed straight for her. They moved slowly, deliberately, like predators closing in. Aaliyah sensed the danger instantly, hand instinctively on her belly, quickening her pace, but unable to escape the tightening circle. One blocked her cart, another closed in from behind, eyes coldly scanning her pregnant belly without respect. She swallowed hard, trying to stay calm, but her legs trembled. Not far away, Duke froze mid-motion. He looked up toward Target. The air seemed to still for a beat. The instinct that had saved him from worse situations screamed, clear, urgent, warning that something was about to go very wrong, and that woman was completely alone. One of the thugs suddenly shoved Aaliyah's shoulder hard, making her stagger, legs buckling for a moment. She clutched her belly reflexively, breath catching in fear. Another snatched the baby bag from her cart, jolting it so items spilled onto the scorching pavement. In that instant, the parking lot froze. No one spoke, no one intervened. People glanced, then turned away, leaving the pregnant woman trembling in the tightening circle. Duke saw it all. He stood up, as if an invisible wire had snapped. He donned his cap, tugged his gloves tight, and without a second's hesitation, crossed the lot. Each step was heavy, deliberate, boots striking the pavement, like drums heralding a storm. Not because he liked trouble, not because he wanted a fight, but in that moment, seeing Aaliyah clutch her belly, eyes wide with panic, he knew if he didn't step in, no one would. And for Duke, some moral lines a man had to defend, no matter the cost. He knew stepping forward would change everything. But his heart never allowed him to stand idle when injustice unfolded before him. Duke approached, his shadow stretching across the hot concrete, forcing the thugs to turn. Aaliyah gripped the cart's edge, eyes wide as the Hells Angels-clad man stopped in front of her. Duke didn't yell, didn't posture. He just stood, tall and calm, voice low but firm. Step away from her. Simple words, but enough to make them burst out laughing. "Oh, look who's here," one sneered, eyes flicking from the winged skull on Duke's vest to his face. "A biker thinks he's a hero?" Another jerked his chin toward Aaliyah. "We're just helping the lady with her stuff. You know, pregnant women need a lot of support." He emphasized lot in a way that made Aaliyah's skin crawl. Duke didn't respond immediately. He stepped back just enough to plant himself in front of her, a wall of muscle between the pregnant woman and the 4 men circling their prey. His eyes locked on the closest thug. "I said, back off." His voice was low, calm to the point of menace, each word measured to stay within the line he was holding. The group laughed louder. "Oh man, Hells Angels in the house." Think that leather scares us? One planted hands on hips, stepping forward, eyes challenging Duke's. He closed in until they were inches apart. Back off, old man. This ain't your business. Duke didn't budge. It is now, he said, voice dropping like a revving engine held in check. Disliking the tone, the thug near Aaliyah bent down, reaching toward her belly, voice dripping with provocation. Let's see what's in here you're protecting so hard. He didn't touch her. Duke grabbed his wrist. No punch, no yank, just a grip, fast and precise, freezing the thug in pain. Pull it back, Duke said. The thug gritted his teeth, tried to jerk free but couldn't. His eyes bulged as pain shot up his arm. Let go, you dog, he hissed. What did I just say? Duke asked, unblinking. Back, off. He released just short of breaking bone, enough to make the thug stumble back, rubbing his wrist and cursing. The other three shifted instantly. Smirks vanished, replaced by calculation and aggression. All right, the leader said into the sudden silence of the lot. You think we'll run from one old biker? Duke didn't answer, but his eyes, rare in ordinary men, said it all. The eyes of someone who had faced real danger, real loss, and knew exactly what was worth trading. Aaliyah huddled behind him, hands shaking but eyes fixed on him. She didn't know who he was, why a stranger would stand for her, but one thing was clear. This man was nothing like the ones surrounding her. One was a storm, one was a shield. The thug to Duke's right glanced at the tattoo on his neck and sneered. Heard you guys have this honor code crap, but this is Atlanta, not some California highway. Here, we make the rules. Duke tilted his head slightly, as if hearing a dull joke. Rules, he echoed. Mine's simple, don't touch pregnant women. The thug stepped closer. Yeah, I like breaking rules. The air thickened. No one nearby dared interfere. Some stood back, phones out filming. The pop music from Target's speakers faded, irrelevant, as if the world held its breath for a spark. Duke inhaled, shifting his feet slightly, just enough for Aaliyah to know he was ready. The thugs shifted too, like wolves circling new prey, and in that second, the Target lot was no longer a carefree shopping spot. It became a small battlefield, a patch where honor, fear, protection, and violence teetered on the edge. No one spoke, but everyone knew the air reeked of violence, and it was about to explode. In that taut moment, the leader lunged first. Duke sidestepped left, dodging the wild hook, then countered with a short, precise uppercut to the ribs. A whoosh escaped the thug's mouth as air was forced from his lungs. He dropped to a knee, but before he could fall, Duke twisted his wrist, shoving him back. Two others rushed in simultaneously. One from the right, one from behind. But Duke had fought in worse spaces. The right one charged too fast, too stupid. Duke blocked the punch with his forearm, twisted the wrist behind the thug's back until it cracked. He screamed like a strangled cat, but Duke didn't let him recover. He kicked the knee, folding him to the ground. Instantly, Duke spun, elbow smashing backward, crisp impact to the jaw of the one behind, sending him reeling into the lot, back slamming a Toyota Camry's hood. He slid down, dazed, hands groping for balance. Meanwhile, the first thug, who had tried touching Aaliyah's belly, raged at the humiliation. He charged like a wild animal, arm raised high. But Duke had seen that move hundreds of times. He didn't retreat. He stepped in, deflected the arm and shoulder-checked the chest. The impact launched the thug like a sandbag off a truck. He staggered, crashed onto a pickup's hood, slid down, gasping in pain. Just then, Aaliyah stumbled behind. She backed up too fast as two thugs circled behind Duke, tripping on the cart's wheel and pitching forward. Duke whipped around at her sharp breath. Despite the fight, his instinct locked on the woman clutching her belly. 2 long strides, and he caught her shoulders before she hit the scorching ground. In that brief contact, Duke said nothing, but his eyes commanded, "Stay behind me, I've got the rest." Aaliyah trembled, hands on her belly, breath hitching from the near fall. Cold sweat soaked her collar. But with Duke shielding her, his back a steel wall, she faced no danger she couldn't handle. He turned back to the thugs, now 3 regrouping, blood hot from being humbled by a biker in front of a crowd. "Who the hell do you think you are?" one roared, face flushed. "Just a trash biker." Duke didn't reply. He adjusted his stance, feet wide, shoulders low, hands loose but ready, the posture of a man who had fought in lots, bars, highways, places with no law but his own grit. The 3 charged together. One swung a hard plastic bottle like a club, another dove low at Duke's waist. The third aimed a straight punch at his face. Chaotic but deadly, if the target lacked experience. But Duke had more than experience. He had survival instinct. He tilted his head to dodge the first punch, deflected the bottle with his wrist, then spun so the other two collided. The impact staggered them. Duke seized the moment, kicking the front one's gut, shoving him back a meter. He doubled over, face green. The waist diver lunged again, but Duke clipped his collarbone, dropping him like a switch was flipped. The fourth, the one elbowed in the jaw earlier, staggered up. He pulled a small knife from his back pocket, the thin blade flashing in the sun. Aaliyah screamed, clutching her belly. Duke saw it. No shout, no panic. He advanced like it was nothing. The thug slashed sideways, fast but predictable. Duke stepped back half a pace, left hand snatching the wrist, right grabbing the collar, twisting until the knife clattered to the concrete. It rang out clang. The thug yelled, but the sound cut off as Duke punched his chest, the blow launching him backward, rolling twice before lying still, limbs twitching as he gasped. The lot fell silent. No one approached. Some filming lowered their phones, sensing something beyond a typical brawl. Duke breathed deep, eyes scanning to ensure no one else joined. The three still moving glared at Duke, like he was a demon in human skin. The leader spat on the ground, voice hoarse with rage and fear. "This ain't over, biker." They backed away, clutching guts and chests, faces twisted in pain and shame. Then they turned and fled to their old cars at the lot's end, leaving sweat and hatred hanging in the air. Duke stood a few seconds longer, ensuring they were gone. When the danger passed, he turned to Aaliyah. She was still shaking, hands on her belly, eyes brimming as if one word would break her. Duke softened his voice, gentle despite his rugged frame. "You okay?" Aaliyah nodded, but her trembling breath betrayed her. A tear rolled down her cheek. I thought I'd fall." Duke placed a hand on her shoulder, light, respectful, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone in the sweltering lot anymore. "It's over," he said. "I'm here." And for the first time since leaving Target, Aaliyah let out a long, relieved breath. The shouting and scuffle sounds hadn't even faded from the air when police sirens blared from the parking lot entrance, red and blue lights sweeping the pavement like sharp blades. 2 Atlanta PD patrol cars screeched to a stop in front of Target, doors flying open as 2 officers stepped out, hands already on their holsters. One quick glance across the lot, a Hells Angels biker standing in the middle of the scene, 3 men groaning a few meters away, and they jumped to conclusions. "Hands where I can see them. Now," one officer yelled, voice tense as if Duke were the only threat here. Duke gritted his teeth, not from fear, but because he was too used to this. People saw his leather before the truth. He raised his hands slowly, palms outward, eyes never leaving Aaliyah to make sure she was still okay. The second officer approached, hands still on his gun, eyes sharp and full of suspicion. "Report of a fight. You attacked them, right?" he asked, tone half accusatory, half wary. Before Duke could open his mouth, Aaliyah stepped out from behind him, hands shaking but voice full of determination. "No, it wasn't him. He saved me." Both officers turned to her, one raising a skeptical eyebrow. "Saved you? With those 3 guys on the ground, you call that saving?" Aaliyah nodded hard, breath still trembling. "They attacked me. They surrounded me. He just stopped them." The first officer still wasn't convinced, glancing at Duke's leather jacket, then scanning the tattoos on his arms. "You know him?" "No," Aaliyah replied, "but without him my baby and I would have. Her voice choked. Duke dipped his head a little, not wanting her to continue. A group of shoppers watched from afar, a few nodding slightly as they heard Aaliyah. A middle-aged woman spoke up loud enough for the police to hear. "I saw everything. Those 4 guys attacked her first." The second officer looked confused by the additional testimony, but the suspicion lingered. It always did, when they saw the words Hells Angels. "We need to check the target cameras," the first officer said, voice reluctant. "Until we do, you're still involved." Duke just nodded, no argument. He knew any word from a biker's mouth was easy to twist. Aaliyah immediately tugged the officer's sleeve lightly, eyes pleading. "Please, the cameras will show everything. He didn't do anything wrong." The 2 officers exchanged glances, then one headed into Target. The air stood still for a long stretch, so much that Duke could hear the store's air conditioning unit humming on the roof. Aaliyah stood closer to him, eyes still red but full of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "No matter what happens next. Thank you for saving me." Duke just replied in a low voice, "I just did what needed doing." A while later the officer came back out, face unreadable. Cameras confirm her story. You are free to leave. But his voice was still full of warning as he looked at Duke. But don't think we won't be watching. Don't let us see you causing trouble again. Duke didn't react, just looked straight into his eyes, neither challenging nor submissive, just a man who knew he'd just been judged by the uniform more than the truth. As the police headed back to their cars, Aaliyah let out a relieved breath, hand on her belly, as if she'd just held on to the most important thing in her life. Duke asked softly, "You holding up okay?" Aaliyah nodded, but her voice shook. I'm still scared." Duke looked in the direction the thugs had fled, eyes darkening. "Don't worry, they won't come back tonight." But deep down he knew guys like that don't give up easy, and the real trouble had only just begun. As the police cars pulled away, and the parking lot returned to its familiar noisy rhythm, Duke watched Aaliyah for a long moment to make sure she was steady. Her face was still pale, lips dry from fear and exhaustion, but her eyes were starting to stabilize. "Anyone coming to pick you up?" Duke asked, voice low and gentle, as if afraid to startle her more. Aaliyah shook her head. "No, I came alone." Duke looked at the cart with a few scattered items, then at her heavy pregnant belly. No need to ask more. He bent down, picked up each item and put them in the bag. "Let me take you home," he said. Aaliyah hesitated. "I don't want to trouble you." Duke tightened the bag's drawstring and shook his head. No trouble, that was it. Simple, final. He walked her to his Harley, then quickly realized a motorcycle wasn't suitable for a pregnant woman. Duke glanced around, spotted Aaliyah's old gray pickup parked at the lot's far end. "Where's your car?" Aaliyah pointed. Duke opened the door for her, checked if she was too shaken to drive. Seeing she was still dazed, he decided right away. "I'll drive. Get in." She looked at him with a flash of worry, but the trust she'd placed in him in the parking lot was still there. She nodded. Duke carefully helped her into the passenger seat, closed the door gently, as if afraid to add pressure to her straining body. The pickup rumbled to life with a shake, then slowly left the target lot, merging into traffic heading toward Jonesboro Road. Silence filled the cab for a long while. Aaliyah stared at her clasped hands, then said softly, "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't shown up." Duke kept his eyes on the road, but his voice dropped. "No one deserves that, especially a pregnant woman." The words were short, but behind them lay an old pain, an unhealed wound. Aaliyah sensed something in his tone. "You talk like someone who's—" Duke was quiet for a few seconds, then answered as if each word had to be pulled from deep in his chest. "I had a family once." Aaliyah turned to look at him. Duke continued. "My wife and my daughter. Car accident, 6 years ago." He didn't look at her, just the darkening road with its faint yellow lights, but his voice was enough for Aaliyah to picture the whole scene. Suddenly one day everything he loved gone in seconds. "I tried to fix myself, but it left a hole that never fills." She said nothing, just placed a hand on her belly, as if sharing part of the pain he carried. Aaliyah took a deep breath and shared. "I grew up without a dad. Mom died early. I worked 2 jobs, one at a restaurant, one at the store, to save for the baby. Then the baby's father left. So, it's just me." Her voice was fragile but not weak. Duke glanced at her, eyes softening. "You're strong," he said. Aaliyah gave a small, sad smile. "Strong is something I don't have a choice about. If I'm not strong, who will be for me?" The truck turned onto a narrower road, trees along Jonesboro Road swaying lazily in the hot late afternoon breeze. "I'm scared," Aaliyah admitted. "Scared I can't raise the baby. Scared of preterm labor. Scared of something like earlier happening again." Duke nodded, voice deepening with solid sincerity. "You have every right to be scared, but you don't have to face everything alone." The words made Aaliyah blink, as if hearing something unfamiliar, real reassurance. Duke added, "If those guys come back, or you notice anything off, call me. But I don't have your number." Duke reached into his leather pocket, pulled out a scratched old phone, unlocked it, and handed it over. "Put your number in here." Aaliyah did, then watched as he saved her name. "All right," Duke said, voice firm. "From now on, if you need anything, even if you just feel uneasy, call me." Aaliyah pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. "Why are you helping me this much?" Duke stared straight ahead, streetlights reflecting in his eyes like thin streaks. "Because I know what losing someone hurts like, and I won't stand by and watch someone else go through the same, if I can stop it." The truck stopped in front of Aaliyah's rundown apartment. As Duke helped her out, Aaliyah felt for the first time in months she wasn't completely alone. "Thank you, Duke," she said, voice trembling but sure. "I owe you so much." Duke nodded. "Go rest. Rest a lot." Before going inside, Aaliyah turned back to him, hand still on her belly protecting both mother and child. "I'll call if anything happens," she said. Duke stepped back, hand on the Harley seat where the bike waited. "Good," he said, "and I'll come." Then he started the Harley, the low solid rumble echoing in the growing Atlanta darkness, like a promise that tonight and the nights after, she wouldn't have to face the world alone. The next day, Atlanta was hot as ever, and Target College Park was packed as if no fight had happened just hours earlier. Duke returned to the parking lot because he'd promised Aaliyah he'd check the security cameras, make sure her statement was properly recorded. He stood by his Harley, talking to the store guard about reviewing the footage. But before he could explain much, loud noise erupted at the lot's entrance. 3 of the 4 thugs from yesterday were approaching, faces bruised but eyes full of rage. The 3 lined up side by side, deliberately putting on a show for the gathering crowd. "There, that's him." The leader, arm still bandaged, pointed straight at Duke before the guard could speak. "That biker attacked us for no reason. He jumped us while we were just walking by." Curious onlookers started gathering. The target guard, who had no love for leather-clad bikers, immediately frowned. "You the one causing trouble yesterday?" he growled. Duke stood still, hands loose at his sides, face showing nothing but weariness from knowing this was coming. "I stopped them from attacking a pregnant woman," he said calmly, but the thugs wouldn't let him finish. "Don't listen to him," the second one yelled. "He came at us from behind, beat us like a maniac. No reason. Check the cameras, nothing proves we did anything wrong." The guard turned to Duke, eyes deeply suspicious. "Police warned you yesterday. Back here looking for more trouble?" Duke clenched his fists lightly, but kept his face unchanged. "I just came to see the cameras." "Yeah," the leader clapped like an actor on stage. "He wants to tamper with the cameras to erase evidence." The crowd started murmuring. "Hell's Angels biker." It was easy for them to believe the worst. "I'm not tampering with anything," Duke said, voice low but clear. But the water was rising fast. The guard touched his radio. "I'm calling the police." Duke opened his mouth to say more when a woman's voice rang out, breathless but strong. "No, don't call the cops on him for nothing." Everyone turned. Aaliyah was crossing the lot, hand on her belly but eyes sharper than yesterday. She walked up close, looking straight at the guard. "They're the attackers. They surrounded me. He saved me. I already told the police." The thugs sneered. "Oh, the pregnant girl's here. You dare say we attacked you? Got proof?" The leader raised a brow, voice venomous. "Parking lot cameras don't show much." Aaliyah didn't back down. "There are cameras at the entrance. People saw, and I'm alive because of him." The guard looked from Aaliyah to the thugs, then to Duke. He saw a trembling pregnant woman still standing up for the biker. Something made him pause, but the thugs wouldn't quit. "She's lying. He's manipulating her," one shouted. Duke narrowed his eyes. "Enough." The guy stepped up, chest bumping Duke. "What you gonna do?" Duke didn't move. The thug bounced back half a step like he'd hit a rock. No punch, but clearly not weak. Aaliyah stepped close to Duke as if protecting him in return. "He didn't do anything wrong. If you keep framing him, I'll call the police first." Heavy silence fell. The thugs saw the tide turning, switched tactics. The leader spat on the ground, eyes more poisonous than yesterday. "You got lucky this time, biker," he snarled, staring at Duke like he wanted to tear him apart. "But remember what I said, this ain't over." He pointed a finger in Duke's face, then turned and left before the guard could call the cops. The other 2 glared at Duke and Aaliyah like they wanted to memorize their faces. They walked off, shoulders tense, hatred trailing like an oil slick. When they were gone, Aaliyah let out a long breath she didn't know she was holding. Duke turned to her. "You didn't have to do that." "I did," Aaliyah replied, "because no one else would stand up and tell the truth." Her voice shook, but it was so resolute, Duke went quiet for a moment. The guard, now less harsh, just said, "I will check the cameras, but I hope no one causes more trouble." Duke nodded, lightly placing a hand on Aaliyah's back to guide her to shade. "You okay?" "I'm okay when you're close," she answered, honestly. But both knew the look the thugs left wasn't an empty threat. It was a sign of a second storm, one sure to be bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than what had just happened in the Target parking lot. That afternoon, after the thugs left and things calmed down, Duke walked Aaliyah to her truck and told her to call him immediately if anything felt off. She nodded, trying to smile, but her eyes still clouded with worry like lingering fog. Duke watched until her old pickup merged into traffic on Old National Highway, then returned to his Harley. He knew today wasn't the end. Guys like those thugs, beaten, humiliated in front of a crowd, wouldn't let it go, especially since they were tied to small-time Southside crews known for holding grudges and loving payback. He started the Harley, the low rumble sounding like a warning under the Atlanta sunset. 3 hours later, as night fully fell and darkness covered the rundown apartment complex on Jonesboro Road, Aaliyah was getting ready for bed when a knock made her jump. Not hard, just 2 soft taps, but at this hour, after everything, it made her heart pound. She edged to the door, peered through the peephole. No one. The hallway was empty. The yellow light flickered like it was about to burn out, bulb bright then dim, making everything feel real and nightmarish at once. Aaliyah swallowed. Probably a neighbor, with the wrong door, she told herself, trying to stay calm. But as she turned away, a text from next door, from the elderly landlady Mrs. Garvey, lit up her phone. Sweetheart, I saw strange men standing outside your door earlier. They were there a long time. 3 of them. You know anyone? Aaliyah's blood ran cold. She immediately checked the peephole again. Still no one. But in the absolute silence, she felt someone watching from a dark corner she couldn't see. Hands shaking, she called Duke. He picked up after half a ring. What's wrong? Aaliyah tried to sound calm, but couldn't hide the fear in her breath. Someone was at my door. Mrs. Garvey said so. They stood there a long time, and I didn't know. I'm scared. Duke, I'm so scared. Duke didn't ask more. Lock the door. Stay away from it. I'm on my way. He hung up without waiting for a reply, like his body reacted on instinct to her panic. 5 minutes later, the Harley roared at the end of the road into the complex, loud enough that a few people opened windows to look down. Duke parked right under the stairs, removed his helmet, and scanned the area with ice-cold eyes. He didn't need long to spot the anomaly. On the wall by the hallway to Aaliyah's floor was a small black marker tag, a neat little symbol. But Duke knew exactly what it was. The mark of a small-time crew that hung around Southside and Old National Highway, the B-29. Not as big as the city's major gangs, but aggressive, uneducated, loved intimidating people with cheap violence. And most dangerous of all, they operated in packs. Rarely did one go alone. Duke stared at the tag a long time, jaw tight. This wasn't random thug trouble anymore. This was organized stalking. He took the stairs 2 at a time, reached Aaliyah's door, knocked lightly so she'd know it was him. The door opened a crack, just enough for a person to slip through. Aaliyah saw Duke and nearly collapsed with relief. Are they still around? She whispered, eyes welling. Don't see anyone, but they were here. Duke answered, voice low and steady. He pointed to the wall mark. You seen this before? She shook her head. What does it mean? Territory mark. Usually tags a target or area they want to control. Means they know where you live, and they're watching. Aaliyah hugged her belly as if instinctively protecting the baby more than herself. What do they want from me? I don't have money. Duke placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. Not about money. It's pride. Yesterday you and I made them lose face. Guys like that want revenge to save face. Aaliyah's face went pale. So, what do I do? Should I move? Duke shook his head. Not yet, but stay inside. Always lock the door. Don't go out alone. Don't open for anyone unless you're sure. He stepped into the hallway, checked windows, then the balcony door for signs of break-in. Aaliyah stood behind him, eyes following every move as if each one made her a little less afraid. Duke turned back, eyes serious. From now on, if you see anyone suspicious, hear anything weird, call me right away. I don't care what time, but you can't always come here, she said, voice small like she feared bothering him. Duke looked deep into her eyes. I can, and I will. He placed a small note on the kitchen table. This is my number and a friend's, Tommy. If I don't pick up, he will. Aaliyah blinked, voice choking. Why are you doing this? You just met me. Duke was silent a few seconds. Then he said, voice low, full of unspoken pain. Because the day I lost my wife and daughter, no one got there in time. Aaliyah placed a hand on her belly, looked up at Duke, eyes softening. I'm sorry, she whispered. No need, Duke said. What I need is to keep the same from happening to someone else. Night wind blew through the hallway, bringing a chill unlike the daytime heat. Duke scanned around once more, making sure no one hid in the shadows. Then he said, I'll keep an eye on this area. Go about your routine, but don't go anywhere alone." Aaliyah nodded, fear easing into a strange trust, the kind that only comes when someone has saved you, and then stood outside your door at night, just to make sure you're safe. "Thank you, Duke," she said. He didn't reply, just nodded, then stepped into the hallway. But before leaving, Duke turned back, eyes sharp as a blade. "And Aaliyah, if I'm right, this is going to get worse. But I won't let them near you." As Duke walked down the stairs, the Harley engine roared again, low, powerful, like distant thunder signaling the storm wasn't far. Aaliyah stood behind the closed door, one hand on her belly, the other on her heart. The darkness around the complex was thicker than ever, but for the first time, she knew she wasn't alone in it. That night, Atlanta's sky was unusually overcast, black clouds hanging low as if pressing down on the whole Jonesboro Road neighborhood. No wind, no usual traffic noise, just a stillness that made Aaliyah uneasy ever since Duke left. She locked every door, checked every bolt, drank a warm glass of water as the doctor advised, then sat on the sofa trying to relax. But her heart raced, as if her body knew something her mind wouldn't admit. Around 9 p.m., the hallway light suddenly flickered and went out, the whole floor plunging into darkness. Aaliyah, startled, jumped up and looked through the peephole, just solid black. "Not now," she whispered, hand on her belly, trying to breathe deep. Power flickered sometimes in the old building, but combined with Duke's warnings it doubled her tension. Her phone buzzed, an automated building notice. Temporary power issue, under repair. But that did nothing to calm her. Then she remembered a package in the downstairs mailbox, a box of baby items she'd ordered online, scheduled for delivery tonight. She had an early shift tomorrow, so if she didn't get it now, the mailman would return it. She stood in the middle of the room, hesitating. Duke had told her not to go out alone, but she didn't want to call him just for a small box. Just a few minutes, she thought, trying to reassure herself. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight, unlocked the door, and stepped into the pitch-black hallway. The small light hit the old wall, revealing cracks, yellowed stains from time and mold. The hallway was dead silent, her slippered feet echoing like someone else following behind. At the stairwell, the air was noticeably colder. Darkness thick as ink, phone flashlight only reaching a few steps ahead, everything else swallowed in silent black, waiting to pounce. She stepped slowly down each stair, grabbed the box, and come right back, she told herself. 1 minute. But at the landing between floors, a tiny sound, shoe sole lightly scraping wall. She froze. Anyone there? No answer. Just her own breath loud in her ears, from fear. She kept going, trying to move faster. But as her foot hit the next step, the darkness ahead shifted, and then like from thin air, a man appeared. He stood dead center in the path to the ground floor, huge body blocking the whole stairwell, eyes glowing like an animal's in the dark. Aaliyah gasped, stepped back, but before she could scream, a familiar but venomous voice came from behind. "Good evening, Mommy." She whipped around, another thug stood on the step above her, then a third stepped from the shadows near the electrical box. And the fourth, the leader, emerged from the dark corner at the stair bottom, lips curled in a wicked grin. All four complete, except the one Duke had injured worst yesterday. "Thought you got away," the leader said, voice like snake poison. "We're not done." Aaliyah trembled so hard her knees nearly buckled. "Please, please let me go." "Oh, we will," the third one said. "But first we gotta teach you a lesson for running your mouth too much, and for calling your biker to save you." He stepped up one stair, closing in. Aaliyah backed up more, but her back hit the cold wall. The stairwell now held only her trembling phone flashlight, light shaking wildly across their faces. "Don't come closer," she said desperately. "I think you don't get the situation," the leader growled. "No one's here, no one hears, and we made sure your biker won't make it in time." Another reached out, touched her hair. "Look at that belly," he said, voice disgusting. "Almost time, huh?" Aaliyah slapped his hand away, but he just chuckled. "Girls got guts." The one blocking the way down suddenly shoved her shoulder hard, making her stagger, hands too slow to protect her belly. A sharp pain shot from her lower abdomen, making her cry out, clutching instinctively. Not a direct kick, but the rough shove, while nearly due, made her body react violently. "Oh God," she groaned, vision blurring. The pain wasn't like normal Braxton Hicks. It was deeper, sharper, like her body warning of something terrible. Hey, I think she's really hurting. The third laughed. Looks like she might pop right here on the stairs. Even better, the leader said. At least she'll remember our faces. Aaliyah shook, breath ragged, gripping the railing to keep from collapsing. She tried to scream, but it came out weak. Scream all you want, one said. No one hears. They slowly closed the circle, shadows falling over her like four distorted shapes swallowing the flashlight. Aaliyah felt the world shrink to one point, the intersection of darkness, fear, and pain squeezing her like it wanted to crush her. Then a sound from the stair bottom. A thud. Then another. Heavy, steady, slow. Boot steps. Heavy boots. One by one. Thump, thump, thump. All four thugs whipped around. Aaliyah, hurting too much to stand steady, forced her eyes open and looked down. The darkness at the stair bottom parted, making way for a tall figure stepping into her phone's light. Black boots. Faded jeans. Hell's Angels leather with the familiar skull logo catching the dim glow. And a face hard as stone. Eyes dark as the sky before a storm. Duke. Not a word. No need to yell. He stood still at the stair base, breathing low and heavy as if he'd raced across the city to arrive in time. The leader muttered a curse. Shit. He really found us. Another backed half a step, voice suddenly lacking challenge. How'd he know? Duke's eyes swept each one, then stopped on Aaliyah. She clutched her belly, leaning on the wall for balance. His eyes darkened, sharp and dangerous, in a way only those who've lost everything can have. He took one more step up, voice low like a Harley engine growling in his chest. You touch a pregnant woman, you picked the wrong guy to mess with. And in that moment, his boot steps echoing off walls, Aaliyah's ragged breathing mixing with the air, and four thugs' faces changing, the atmosphere in the apartment stairwell cracked like an overstretched wire. One thing was certain, the real storm had arrived. The moment Duke stepped onto the first stair, the cramped space seemed to shrink around him, the chill from the concrete walls seeping into the air, making the four thugs shiver slightly, not from the weather, but from Duke's eyes. Those eyes were the kind you only see in people who've lost everything in life. Cold, deep, and utterly unmoved by threats. The leader swallowed hard, then tried to muster his initial aggression. You're too late, biker, he growled, fighting the tremor in his voice. I told you, this ain't over. Duke didn't respond. He took another step, then another. The sound of his boots echoed in the narrow stairwell, bouncing off the walls in a low, slow rhythm that made the thugs feel like something bigger, darker, heavier was crawling toward them. The younger one in the middle, face twisted, hissed, "Take him out. What are you standing there for?" Like a switch flipped, all three charged at once. No space, no escape, just a tight stairwell where every punch could smash a head into the wall, slip, or tumble down like a corpse. Duke knew it. He moved on fighter's instinct that had saved him from death before, maneuvering cleanly in the confined space, as if he'd fought in even tighter spots. The first one lunged from the right, swinging a fist straight at Duke's jaw. Duke blocked with his left wrist, twisted the guy's hand, used his own momentum to yank him down the lower steps. He crashed headfirst into the iron railing, a sharp clang making the whole stairwell vibrate. Before he could groan, Duke kicked precisely into his chest, sending his body sliding down several steps, slamming into the wall. The second jumped in from the left, trying to ram Duke's side, but Duke spun, elbow smashing straight into the back of his neck. The blow wasn't enough to cause serious injury, but enough to stagger him face down. Right then, the leader pulled a folding knife, the blade glinting in the dark like a predator's eye. "You're fucking dead, biker," he roared, slashing diagonally in a strike that could gut someone if they didn't dodge. But Duke didn't dodge like a normal person. He dodged with the instinct of someone who'd learned survival. He dropped low, left hand grabbing the wrist, right seizing the handle, twisting it back. A fluid motion in under 2 seconds. The knife clattered to the ground with a chilling clang. The leader hadn't processed it when Duke shoved his shoulder into the wall and punched straight into his chest, the impact snapping him back like a released bowstring. But the instant Duke landed that punch, Aaliyah's scream pierced the air. "Duke!" He whipped around, and his heart dropped. Aaliyah clutched her belly, eyes wide with pain. She sank to one knee on the stair, hands gripping tight as if an invisible blade was slicing inside. "Oh, God, no, not now," she gasped, breaths ragged. Duke felt his blood turn ice cold. An old fear that never vanished surged from the deepest part of his memory, his wife, the child he'd lost. No, not again. Not one more time. He turned back to the 4 thugs, 3 now struggling up, bodies shaking from pain and fear. But seeing Aaliyah in agony, Duke's face changed completely. No more calm, no more reason, just a deep, heavy, terrifying rage that made the space itself seem to vibrate. "You?" he said, voice so low it was nearly a growl. "You just made the biggest mistake of your lives." The third, the one Duke had just floored, stupidly charged again, trying to grab his jacket. Duke spun, seized his wrist, slammed it into the wall until he let go. Then he yanked him forward by the collar, knee driving into his gut. He doubled over, screaming in pain, and Duke shoved him down the stairs, letting him roll several times to the bottom corner. The second leaped onto Duke's back, trying to choke him from behind. Duke slammed backward into the wall, crushing him against the brick until he bounced off. He spun, landing a brutal punch under the jaw that sent him sprawling backward, head clanging against the metal railing, with a spine-chilling sound. The leader staggered up, breathing hard, still trying to act tough. "Fuck, who do you think you are?" Duke advanced, step by step, eyes cold as forged steel. "I'm the one who warned you yesterday." The guy swung, but Duke caught the fist, twisted the wrist, and elbowed his nose fast. Blood sprayed. He screamed, clutching his face. Duke grabbed his collar, yanked him back, and kneed his chest, dropping him to the floor. The fourth, the one who'd blocked the exit at first, had seen enough. He looked at his 3 friends, lying or kneeling, gasping, then at Duke standing mid-stairwell, like a human storm, and he understood. Not an opponent, never an opponent. Fuck this. He backed away, then turned and ran. The third scrambled up, hand on the wall, and fled after him. Only the knife-wielding leader remained. He tried to stand, but his legs shook too much. Duke grabbed his collar, hauling him up like trash. "You're gonna tell me who sent you," Duke snarled, each word cutting like a blade. "And you're gonna tell me now," he stammered, mouth full of blood. We just wanted to get even." Duke slammed him into the wall again, not to kill, but enough to silence him in panic. "If you or any of your crew come near her again, one time, I won't be this gentle." Duke leaned in close, voice low for only them. "And I swear that on everything I've lost." He was nearly crying, nodding frantically before Duke let go. The guy collapsed onto the steps, then crawled away after the others, vanishing into the dark on shaking legs and choked breaths. When they were gone, Duke turned instantly to Aaliyah. She leaned against the wall, face ashen, hands on her belly, breath sharp and fast. "Aaliyah," Duke rushed over, catching her before she slid down. "The pain, it's too much," she said, through broken breaths. I think I'm going into labor." Duke's heart pounded like it would burst his chest. The world blurred around him, only her and her faltering breaths remaining. "Hold on to me," he said, voice trembling with fear. "I'm getting you down. I'm getting you to the hospital now." Aaliyah gripped his jacket until her knuckles went white, tears falling from pain and terror. "Duke, don't let them come back. No one will touch you again," he said, lifting her off the cold concrete. "I swear." His footsteps echoed in the stairwell, fast, strong, determined, carrying the vow of a man who'd lost everything, but this time would not let history repeat. And in the heavy darkness of Jonesboro Road, amid the groans of the old building, Duke carried Aaliyah outside, ready to face whatever waited ahead. One thing was certain, the main fight was over, but the fight for life, and for the unborn child, had only just begun. Duke carried Aaliyah down to the ground floor, his breath heavy from the fight and fear for her. As he burst through the main door, the damp night air hit his face, carrying the most familiar sound in the world to him, the roar of Harley engines approaching. 3 motorcycles turned into the alley from the street, headlights sweeping the path. It was the Redwood chapter, Tommy Grinder, Ray Bluejaw, and Cassie Steelbird, Duke's biker brothers and sister. Tommy jumped off his bike first. "Duke, I got your emergency text." "What?" He stopped mid-sentence, seeing Aaliyah clutching her belly, face pale as death. "Shit, she's hurt." Ray dismounted next, glancing at the blood and boot marks on the stairs behind Duke, instantly understanding this wasn't minor. "D29, he asked. Duke nodded sharply. "They ambushed her." Cassie backed her bike to the curb. "Where are they?" "Ran," Duke replied, voice low but burning. "And you'll see the cameras later. They deserve prison time." Right then, 2 police cars screeched into the courtyard, red and blue lights tearing through the night. Doors flew open. the officers taking in the scene. Hell's Angels biker, pregnant woman limp in Duke's arms, signs of a brawl everywhere. On reflex, the youngest officer shouted, "Put her down, hands up." The Redwood chapter immediately pushed back. "Hey, easy," Tommy growled. "She needs an ambulance, not cuffs." "Everyone back," the second officer barked. "We know Hell's Angels, nothing good comes from you being involved." Duke nearly roared, "She's in labor. If you don't help, she and her baby." Aaliyah weakly squeezed his sleeve, breaths ragged. "Duke, it hurts so much." The young officer stepped closer, hand on his holster, voice tight. "I said put her down now. If I put her down now, she'll collapse." Duke shouted back, losing control with police for the first time in years, not out of defiance, but because the fear of losing another person was crushing his chest. Tommy stepped between Duke and the cops. "Hey, look at the woman. You think we did that? We just got here. Duke saved her. He didn't hurt her." The older officer lowered his voice, studying Aaliyah, cold sweat, purple lips, hands clutching her belly like the pain was tearing her apart. The suspicion in his eyes softened. "Any witnesses?" Ray pointed up the stairs. "Cameras there. And the old lady in 2B saw from her window. She's the one who called security." As if on cue, Mrs. Garvey cracked the building door and yelled, "Hey, that biker saved the girl. Those bastards attacked her." The police turned to her. One officer exhaled sharply through his nose, then said, "Check the cameras." Tommy and Ray led them to the building's camera box. A few minutes later, one of the longest silences in Duke's life, the police returned. Their faces had completely changed. The young officer looked at Duke, suspicion gone for the first time. "Cameras show everything. You saved her." Duke didn't respond. He only cared about one thing. "Where's the ambulance?" "On the way." And as if summoned by the words, ambulance sirens wailed from down the street. The vehicle screeched to the curb, two paramedics jumping out with a stretcher beside Duke. "Put her here." Duke gently laid Aaliyah on the stretcher. She gripped his hand until her knuckles were white. "Duke, don't let them come back." "I'm not going anywhere," he said, leaning close to her eyes. "You'll be safe, I promise." As the medics wheeled her into the ambulance, the doors closing but Aaliyah still holding Duke's hand until the last second. A nerve inside him, the part always on guard, always terrified of losing what he cared for, snapped so hard his vision darkened with emotion. As the ambulance sped off into the night, its wail echoing down Jonesboro Road, the police turned back to Duke. "We apologize," the older officer said. "We jumped to conclusions too fast." Duke nodded slightly, not wanting to drag it out. "The Bull 29, sir?" he asked. "We'll issue warrants for those guys tonight." Tommy crossed his arms, voice like steel. "Redwood chapter will find them if the police are slow." The young officer frowned. "No vigilante pursuits." Duke cut in with a low, firm voice. "We won't break the law, but we won't let a pregnant woman get ambushed at her own door again." No one could argue with that, because it wasn't a threat, it was a code. As the police left, Duke stared down the empty road where the ambulance had vanished. He pulled off his gloves, sat on the concrete step, hands on his knees. Tommy sat beside him, tossing him a water bottle. "You good?" Duke didn't drink. "No, not until I know she and the baby are okay." Ray spoke from behind. "We're going to the hospital with her. Someone like Aaliyah shouldn't be alone." Cassie nodded. "Get on. Tonight the Redwood chapter doesn't split up." Duke stood, eyes sharp again, but this time not from anger, from resolve to protect. "Let's go," he said. "Aaliyah needs us." And 4 Harleys roared to life, engines thundering through the night like a silent vow. They wouldn't let anything else bad happen, no matter if it was cops, gangs, or fate. That engine sound followed Duke out of the complex, leaving behind a wrecked stairwell, bloodstains, and an unfinished warning for those who'd picked the wrong man to mess with. But ahead was a race against time for the life being rushed to the hospital, and Duke would fight for that life, with everything left in his heart. As the 4 Redwood chapter Harleys roared into the Atlanta Medical Center parking lot, their deep, thick engine sounds echoed like the pounding heart in Duke's chest, loud, persistent, unrelenting. He jumped off his bike almost before the engine died, sprinting straight to the emergency entrance where harsh white lights illuminated the tense faces of doctors and nurses wheeling Aaliyah into the treatment room. A nurse blocked him per protocol. "You can't go in." Duke breathed hard, fists clenched like he wanted to punch through the wall. "How is she?" "The baby? She's in rapid labor," the nurse said. voice calm from seeing hundreds of births. Severe stress plus the impact triggered it, but we'll take care of her. You have to wait outside. Duke stood frozen, staring at the closing emergency room door, a soulless white barrier, but behind it was Aaliyah's and the baby's entire world. Tommy placed a hand on his shoulder. Sit down a bit, Duke. But Duke didn't budge. His eyes locked on the new A Dimmet sign as if staring long enough would make it vanish so he could go in and protect her. Ray brought a cup of water, but Duke didn't touch it. The whole chapter knew he was in a deep place where only those who've lost everything understand. After 10 minutes, Duke started pacing relentlessly, angry steps echoing in the quiet hallway. He felt like his skin was being torn from the inside by an invisible monster. No more losing anyone. The words repeated in his head like a curse, and when he sat in the waiting chair, hands on his knees, the memories unannounced came back like a tsunami crashing through his mind. He was 6 years ago, in another hospital hallway, same white lights, same antiseptic smell, same alarm speakers. His wife was in labor with their daughter. A car accident had triggered premature birth. He ran alongside the gurney, holding her hand until the last second. But when the operating room doors closed, he hadn't said "I love you" before fate took everything. Neither survived. That image, the doctor bowing his head, the sympathetic pat on his shoulder, haunted him every night for 6 years. That's why he walked away from everything. Joined Redwood chapter rebuilt from ashes with Harley engines and the code of those who'd lost just as much. The door swung open, snapping him back. A doctor emerged, face dotted with sweat but eyes softened. Duke rushed over, heart exploding. "How is she, the baby?" The doctor smiled. The kind men who've carried every wound recognize instantly. "Mother and baby are both fine. A healthy boy." Duke blinked several times. His legs felt rooted to the floor. Did she suffer a lot?" "Yes, but she's stable now." "The baby too, but she's asking for you." "For me?" Duke whispered, almost disbelieving. "She wants to see you first," the doctor replied. Tommy looked at Duke, grinning lightly. "Go on, man. Don't keep her waiting." Duke walked into the room like someone pulled from an abyss. The room was softly lit, faint antiseptic smell, and in the center bed was Aaliyah, hair matted with sweat, face exhausted but eyes sparkling when she saw him. On her chest was a small bundle in a white blanket, the newborn boy, pink skin, tiny mouth moving as if seeking warmth. "Duke," she called, voice weak but full of emotion. He stepped to the bed, unsure what to do. I got here as fast as I could," he said, voice trembling with lingering fear and emotion. "I know," Aaliyah whispered, eyes tearing up. "I heard you on the stairs. I knew you wouldn't let them hurt me." Duke took a long breath to stay composed and not break. "You did great," he said. "You and the little guy so strong." She looked down at the baby. "Do you want to hold him?" Duke froze. It had been 6 years since he last held a child, and the last one he held never opened its eyes to him. The pain was still raw. But as Aaliyah gently offered the baby, Duke's hands shook for just a second. Then he took the boy with the care of someone who'd once held the world and let it slip away. The baby was tiny, warm, only a few pounds but heavy in the deepest part of his soul. He stirred, let out a small whimper, then cracked his eyes open to look at Duke, as if sizing up the rugged man holding him. Duke felt a crack in the stone wall he'd built around his heart for years. A warmth seeped in, something soft he thought he'd lost forever. "Hey, little man," he whispered, voice hoarse. "Welcome to the world." Aaliyah wiped tears but couldn't hide her smile. "You look like you've been waiting for this moment a long time." Duke swallowed the lump in his throat. "Longer than you know." From the door, bootsteps sounded. Redwood chapter entered, surprisingly gentle for their usual rough look. Ray carried a big bag of baby stuff, diapers, formula, bottles, blankets, towels. Tommy pushed in a small wooden crib he'd assembled in 10 minutes in the hospital lobby. Cassie set a gift box on the table, a few $100s collected from the biker brothers and some hand-knitted items. "We're not great at cute stuff," Tommy said, hiding awkwardness with a gruff voice. "But the kid needs gear and so do you." Aaliyah covered her mouth, tears flowing again, but not from pain. "I don't know how to thank you enough." "No need," Cassie said. "Family doesn't thank." The word family made Aaliyah look at the group in disbelief. Duke placed the boy back in her arms. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "Not while Redwood chapter is here." Right then, the baby let out a small cry and gripped Duke's finger with his tiny hand. That moment shot straight into Duke's heart, making him laugh through tears. For the first time in 6 years, he cried not from loss but from being given something back. Aaliyah looked at him a long time. "Duke, you were the first to hold my son, and I want you to know something." "What?" Duke asked. "Without you, he wouldn't have had a chance to be born." Duke bowed his head, voice almost a whisper. "No, your son gave me a chance to start over." No one spoke more. The room held only the heart monitor beeps, Aaliyah's soft breaths, the baby's tiny yawn, and the Harleys of Redwood chapter idling below, like the heartbeat of a new family forming. That night, under hospital lights, Aaliyah, who thought she'd been alone her whole life, had a family without blood but full of compassion, and Duke, who thought his heart only had empty spaces, felt it beat again for the first time in years. Clear, strong, and full of hope. The ceremony took place 3 days later at Atlanta City Hall, under a rare cool blue sky after days of gloom. Rows of white chairs lined up neatly in front of the building, American flags fluttering lightly in the breeze, and more people gathered than usual, partly curious, partly drawn by stories spreading online about the Hell's Angel biker who saved a pregnant woman from a gang of thugs. Duke arrived with Redwood chapter, 4 Harleys parked in a neat row by the curb, engines just cut, but still leaving a heavy echo like war drums. He wore his old leather jacket, simple bandana, and stood back as if avoiding attention. But today, avoiding was useless. When the microphone crackled, the Atlanta mayor's voice, a middle-aged woman with decisive poise, boomed across the courtyard. "Today we honor acts of bravery, people who put others' safety above their own." The crowd quieted, eyes forward. "This past week," she continued, "a pregnant woman was threatened by 4 armed men in her own apartment complex. She nearly lost her life and her unborn child, but thanks to one man's intervention, a man with no badge, no gun, no duty, except conscience, she was saved." In the front row, Aaliyah held her tiny son, wrapped in the blanket Cassie had given from Redwood chapter. The baby slept soundly, tiny hands lightly gripping his mother's shirt. Aaliyah looked at Duke, a silent look of gratitude deep enough that he had to turn away to avoid choking up. "Duke Mercer," the mayor called, "please come forward." The crowd applauded. A few whistles of praise rang out. Duke stood still a second, surprised his name was called so formally. Tommy nudged his elbow. "Go on, hero." Duke glanced at him, shook his head slightly, but walked to the stage with a stiff yet slightly awkward gait, like someone unused to being celebrated. Standing at the microphone, the mayor looked at him sincerely. "You risked your life to protect a stranger. You fought in a confined space, disarmed the attacker, and got her to the hospital in time to save both mother and child. On behalf of the city of Atlanta, we present you with the Community Bravery Award for Courage and Community Protection." She placed the medal in his hand, a round silver disc engraved with a star and the words "For Courage Beyond Duty." Duke stared at it a long time. He never expected recognition, and the last person to give him a medal was his wife, on his birthday years ago. His hand lightly clenched the medal, as if holding something intangible that had just come back to life inside him. The mayor turned to Aaliyah Brooks. "Please come up." Aaliyah carried the baby, walking slowly but steadily to Duke's side. At the microphone, her voice softened, but every word carried deep emotion. "Without Duke, I don't know if I'd still be alive. I don't know if my son would have taken his first cry. When those 4 cornered me, I thought I'd reached my limit. But Duke, someone I didn't know, someone with no reason to risk his life for me, showed up." She turned to him, eyes welling. "He saved 2 lives," the crowd murmured. A man in the back row shouted, "God bless you, man," and others nodded along. A reporter raised his camera, saying to a colleague, "Just like yesterday's post, Hell's Angel saves pregnant woman. This story's going nationwide." Duke heard it, and for a moment felt the conflict inside. He didn't do it for praise, recognition, or headlines. But then he saw Aaliyah's eyes, the tiny baby sleeping peacefully, and understood that sometimes one person's story can restore faith in an entire community. The mayor smiled, speaking loud for all to hear. "We too often judge by appearances, by leather, by tattoos, and forget that kindness has no uniform. Today, we learn that from Duke Mercer and the Redwood chapter." Tommy, Ray, and Cassie, standing below the stage, held their heads high, none hiding their pride. A few people started clapping, then more. Then the entire crowd stood, applause crashing like waves against City Hall. Many online had posted the hashtag #NotAllAngelsHaveWings, taken from the article about Duke. Another headline read, "Hell's Angel or Real Angel," with Alea beside him, baby in her arms, and the crowd applauding him. Duke had never felt a moment so conflicted yet harmonious between two worlds, an outlaw biker and a community hero. As the ceremony ended, Alea turned to Duke. "Thank you for everything." Duke tilted his head slightly. "I just did what anyone should." She laughed softly. "You know not everyone does." Duke didn't reply, but as Redwood chapter stepped up, hands on his shoulders, their proud eyes said it all. Today the whole city saw the true heart of a Hell's Angel, and for the first time in years, Duke no longer felt like a wandering ghost. He had stepped back into the light, not because he wanted to, but because he'd accidentally saved the two people who redefined what family means. The ceremony ended, but its echo lingered in the hearts of Atlanta's people. A week later, as articles kept spreading and people still whispered about the biker who saved the mother and child, Duke stood in front of Alea's old apartment, watching the last boxes secured on the bed of the brand new pickup Redwood chapter had pooled money to buy her. "All set," Tommy said, placing the final box. "New place is way safer, cameras 24-hour security, and no B-29s daring to show up there." Alea stood nearby, the baby sleeping soundly in her arms. Her face still showed post-birth fatigue, but her eyes were different. No longer the fear and exhaustion from when Duke first met her at Target. Now it was the look of someone stepping into a new chapter, full of hope. "I still can't believe," she said softly. "You and everyone did so much for me." Duke checked the straps multiple times, as if it helped him avoid talking about his feelings. "You need to be safe," he replied, voice still low and simple as always. "This place isn't good. The bikers 29 are still lurking around here." Alea glanced at the gang tag on the wall, nearly scrubbed off by the landlord, but still a faint reminder. "Right," she admitted. "This isn't home anymore." Duke closed the pickup bed, turned to her, eyes softening. "The new place has a balcony overlooking the park," he said gently. "Your son will have space to grow." She looked at the baby in her arms, the sleeping child, tiny face peaceful as an angel. She gave a small smile, then looked up at Duke. "You know," her voice caught, "you saved 2 lives." Duke stood still. Those words hit harder than any punch he'd taken in a fight. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out right away. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees, glowing warm on his hair. "Not just that," he finally said. "You saved me from the dark." Alea blinked, surprised, but Duke didn't take it back. He looked at her as if saying something he'd held in too long. "Was lost for years. After losing everything, I didn't think I belonged anywhere. Redwood kept me going. But, you and the little guy," he paused, steadying his voice. "You two gave me a reason to step out of the past." Alea didn't hide her tears. She placed her hand on Duke's, squeezing lightly. A silent moment so real the world seemed to slow a beat. Harley engines rumbled behind, breaking the quiet but not the emotion. In fact, it felt like the heartbeat of a larger family waiting for the next step. Redwood chapter was ready. Over a dozen Harleys lined the street, chrome gleaming in the afternoon light, seats vibrating with the low growl of idling engines. The sound echoed through the neighborhood, making people peek out windows, wondering who was arriving or leaving. Tommy put on his helmet, shouting over the noise. "Duke, long ride. Let's go, man." Duke turned back to the pickup with Alea's belongings, the small crib neatly placed in the bed, and her leaning against the door, baby asleep in her arms. "You'll visit, right?" she asked, voice small but full of hope. Duke smiled, a real smile, rare on his face. "I'll visit, anytime you need." She nodded, a soft smile with a tear sparkling in the sunlight. Duke walked to his Harley. He mounted the seat, put on his helmet, and in the moment the engine roared to life, he didn't look like someone leaving. He looked like someone starting a new journey. Redwood chapter turned in unison, over a dozen Harleys heading toward the open road ahead. Engines thundered, blending into a thick, low, powerful symphony, a metal chorus the neighborhood would remember for a long time. Alea stood in the afternoon light, holding her baby close, watching Duke lead the biker pack. The baby stirred slightly, as if reacting to the engines. Alea smiled. "Hear that, son? That's the sound of our hero." Duke glanced in his rear view one last time, seeing Aaliyah the baby, the new pickup, and knew in his heart, no matter how long the road ahead, no matter that he was still a biker living by engines and dust, he now had something he thought he'd lost forever. A reason to live better, a place to return to, even if not every day. A promise to keep. Then he twisted the throttle. Dozens of Harleys roared in unison, engines shaking the street like thunder in the Atlanta afternoon. People watched, some waving, some just standing, and wondering how a Hell's Angel could become the city's hero. But the story was told, and would be retold many times, about the dark stairwell night, the fight no one believed was real, the pregnant woman saved by a man society once feared, and the baby born because of one man's courage without a badge. Duke rode away, but his name and his actions stayed. In the whispers of Jonesboro Road residents, in the spreading articles, in Aaliyah's and the baby's hearts. And then, like every other biker legend, it blended into the fading engine roar, becoming part of Atlanta's wind, passed from person to person, like a story no one wants to end. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss thrilling, emotional stories like this, and follow the channel today to catch the next journey of real-life heroes.